I remember when I was an adolescent and I was starting to get sexual energy and excited about women and considering making love to women, I remember feeling torn between two polarized extremes. My mother, who had taught me never treat women as objects. And so I was always very careful with women, always sensitive with them because I didn't want to hurt them or do anything that was in violation of that principle that my mother had taught. And then I had the opposite of my father, who I came home one day after a date, and he said, "Well, did you get any?" And then I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, did you dip your wicket?" And his view of, being a good man or adolescent, he was trying to teach me something about how to be a man in relationship to a woman. And I gagged at that thought. So here I was caught between that view of man and my mother's strong communication to me, don't be that way. And neither of those two extremes, be so gentle, so sensitive, where my masculinity is lost, or the other extreme where, just have at it, felt true to me, and I didn't know. I didn't have a model or anything to guide me. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone. I think it's the majority, and I think that's the trick, is how do we be in balance? How do we express power and forcefully go after what we want in a clean way and still be sensitive enough that there's an invitation for someone to respond back,
yes.
Not blow them out of the water.
Yes.
And I didn't get that type of guidance. I didn't get that type of mentorship, and it's taken a long time. I actually feel some amount of shame or looking back discomfort or regret at when I've allowed myself to be blown away by others stronger, or when I've been awkward in exerting power.
Yes.
And with some awareness, I can find that balance, men can find that balance, and life looks different. You have more clean interaction with all that is and all you want.
And I find there's another pole, and that is where I'm very certain about what I want, and I go for what I want, and yet it's completely narcissistic. Mm-hmm. So that I find that I'm getting what I want, and I'm essentially ignoring the people around me because what I want is more important than anything else. So that's just another imbalance that occurs in the masculine realm.
Yeah. So what this experience is, at least for me, what I believe we are inviting men to, is an opportunity to look at and examine, not from an intellectual standpoint, but from an inner experience standpoint. What are the beliefs, what are the assumptions, what are the points of view that I hold about masculinity and about my own power, and to what extent are they mine? Or shaped by society or in reaction to society, which neither one of them, shaped by a reaction, is truly mine. What is my relationship to power? To what extent is it truly the shape that I am and want to be? And how can I find a more clear, deep, solid, full expression of who I am as a man in my masculinity?
And that full expression is important because the workshop provides a wide range of experiences that stretch us in every direction, so that we can go to the extremes and find out where is my edge, where do I actually feel comfortable, and I've got to be pushed past my comfort zone in order to find out where I'm comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing I love about the workshop is it's highly experiential. So like you said, Keith, instead of sitting around thinking about it, talking about it, you play, you have some experiences that then allow you to self-reflect. What's my experience of power? And for me, it started with understanding how I've programmed myself around power. And then in seeing how I've programmed it, the next step that occurred for me in the workshop is playing with different ways of being with my power, because there's a container, there's a safe environment to do that and make mistakes, and then have the experience of that, experiencing myself differently as it relates to how I express and play with power.
Yes.
And that gave me a bit of confidence and insight to go start doing it in the world.
Yeah.
There's also this aspect of being reflected by other men, that when I'm out in the world, I don't necessarily get a reflection back, especially a clean reflection back from other men about how am I showing up, how am I portraying myself, how do I feel in this powerful place, or even who am I? And so part of the workshop that I loved was the fact that we spent time reflecting back to each other how we were coming across. And that was the first time I got that kind of reflection in a really long time. It's hard to find men who will say, this is how you're coming across, this is my impression of you, and this is the impact it's having on me.
Yeah.
You know, as we talk, one thing that strikes me is I have a different definition in myself around male power than I did before the workshop. When I went to the workshop and I first heard about it, I had some conditioned thoughts about male power, and that it's supposed to be powerful and big, and I didn't even like the word. I own a different definition in myself of what power is, and power is the empowerment to go do what you want to do, to accomplish, to just to sit, whatever it is. It's presence. It's like the forceful presence to create what you want.
Yeah. I sometimes experience it, for me, slightly differently, but directionally the same. And for me, it's expressing myself fully unedited, where I can walk through life comfortable in my body, expressing who I am, what I believe, what I know, what I see, what I feel, unencumbered by some of the society's beliefs about what I should be, or my own self-editing that says, no, that's bad, that's not good. And so I find that the more I feel my own power, the more I'm comfortable completely with who I am. And so the power comes out very easily. It doesn't have a punch to it, because there's nothing that needs to get out there, nothing needs to hit, and yet it's still solid. So it feels to me like embodying more and more of who I am.
And it's not in response to not having power. So I noticed in my life that my expressions of power were usually because I felt disempowered in some way. That someone talked down to me, so I had to get bigger. Someone didn't treat me well, so I had to get angry. Somebody, betrayed me, so I had to sue them. So those were my expressions of power, were in response to something happening to me rather than from a place internally. And you used the word embodied, and I find that that's really important too in the workshop, is feeling power that comes from the body, not just from the head, because as men we're taught to be in our heads, and we operate from our heads, and we're kind of like heads being moved around by a body without being really in the body. So that's an important part for me about the workshop, is that we're physical and we spend time in our bodies, not just in our heads.
Yes, oh yeah. It's almost as if we invite men to an exploration and say, pay attention to your body. There are clues for you there.
Or even more than that, pay attention to all the things you don't pay attention to, because that's where the goodies are.
Yes.
So if you're a head guy, you're already good at that. What about your heart?
Yeah.
What about your body?
Yeah.
What about your intuition?
Yeah.
And I believe we all collectively have been programmed ourselves to operate a certain way, and at some point you go, wait a minute, I want to look at that. I want to shift. And from that shift is the invitation to be authentic. What's my authentic expression? What's really in me that is coming out? How do I embody that? And that's the power we're talking about, authentic expression.
Yeah.